Hi, I'm State Senator Joe Markley outside the Senate chamber on Tuesday afternoon. We've been here for a few hours, haven't gotten underway yet. You've heard that routine before. So I won't dwell on that. I assume we're going to get to work and be here late tonight on a number of bills. But the big news really was the agreement that the governor reached with the unions on concessions, which would be a piece of putting together a state budget this year. The governor had said from January that he was hoping to get about $700 million a year in union concessions to help get us out of this $5 billion gap that we've now got in next year's budget. And all the budgets that were put together counted on that savings. I'd say with this agreement I have a few concerns, and I'll start by saying the target has changed. When we were talking about $700 million, we had a $3 billion deficit. Now that we have a $5 billion deficit, I think Senate Republicans have felt the union needs to go further than they had gone previously because everybody else is strained as well. But the agreement that the governor reached is just the $700 million. Of course, the other concern I have about it, just in principle, is that it's an agreement that again extends the contract an additional 5 years. So for whatever modifications we're getting and whatever savings we're realizing, we would now be pushing off until 2027 the chance to renegotiate aspects of these contracts. I think that we would need to make a very good deal to justify tying our hands in that way. And I'm not convinced that this is the deal. I haven't had a chance to look at it deeply, and we will certainly be discussing it, but there's some things right on the surface of it that alarm me. Part of the deal is an agreement to have 3 straight years of 0% wage increase for unionized state employees. What concerns me is after those 3 years are over, there then is an automatic 3.5% increase in the next 2 years, in addition to the increases which would be built into the contracts. So for a lot of these employees, the increases would not be 3.5%, but more like 6 or even 7% a year for those 2 years. Additionally, the state also would give them at that point a $2,000 bonus effectively. So as often seems to be the case, I feel like we run the risk of trading short-term benefits for long-term obligations, and I'm not convinced that we're going to be in any better position to pay those obligations 4 years from now than we are right here today. Another aspect of it that disappoints me, there's been much talk about getting overtime payments out of pension calculations. The pension's based only on the last few years of an employee's time, and frequently there's a lot of overtime in those last few years, which then raises the pension payments for the rest of the life of the retired employee. This caps the amount of overtime that can be applied, but it caps it at 60% of the employee's regular salary. So you can be earning 160% of salary and have that count towards your pension calculation. First of all, we shouldn't be paying anybody overtime to that extent. I think at some point we have to recognize that that's a management problem if you're paying people 60% over their salary in overtime. And I really don't feel we can afford to give people pensions that generous based on their overtime payments. And I think that most people in the state feel that way as well. Of course, the problem is we don't negotiate the agreement with the unions. The governor does the negotiation, and in the end, as legislators, all we can do is say yes or no to it. That yes or no will probably not occur until after session is over. In a special session, we're likely to come back in June to deal with the pensions, with the proposed changes in the pensions and the contracts. That also means probably that I have to confess that I'm skeptical about our ability to get this job done in the 2 weeks which are left to us. We're supposed to be done 2 weeks from tomorrow. With this wrinkle of a new contract that we have to examine, I think it makes it that much more difficult for us to pass a budget before the contract has been voted on either by the unions or by the legislature. So that's the conundrum that we're facing up here as we go into the final weeks of the legislature. We will be in session today, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday this week, and I will try to get back to you with another report before we go home on Thursday evening. Thank you very much for your attention.